Hey everybody and welcome to Dominion Cards, the video series where we take a strategic, in-depth look at various cards from the board game Dominion. Today we are looking at Treasure Map. This is a 4-cost action card from Seaside, and it says trash this and a treasure map from your hand. If you trashed 2 treasure maps, gain 4 golds onto your deck. So quick clarification about this. When you play this card, you must actually successfully move both that card and another copy of Treasure Map that is in your hand to the trash pile in order to actually get the golds. So this means a couple of things don't work. Throne Room does not work. Okay, if you just have a Throne Room and 1 copy of Treasure Map in your deck, that's not moving 2 treasure maps to the trash, right? You only just move the 1, so it doesn't work. Command cards don't work. So there's stuff like Band of Misfits and Overlord. Particularly under the current rules of the game, they play a card from the supply, but it's forced to stay where it is. It means it doesn't move to the trash. So even if another copy that was in your hand went to the trash, you didn't move the copy that you played, so you don't get a benefit. And of course, if a map is on its own in your hand and you play it, it does go to the trash. You don't get any benefit, so you do actually just lose the card. So no matter what, there's really no getting around the core fact with Treasure Map. You must actually own 2 copies of it, and they are both in your hand. There is nothing else you can do about that, right? It has to be that way. So you can't get away with only buying 1. Okay, so what's Treasure Map doing for us? So Treasure Map is asking us to pair up 2 copies of them into the same hand. When you do that, what you get for that is you gain 4 golds and you top deck them, and both of the treasure maps are thrown in the trash. So this happens exactly 1 time for 2 cards, and you just get your 4 golds. So Treasure Map, fundamentally, it's a gold gainer, right? That's basically all it does. We've talked about gold gainers before, like Bandit, like Courtier, like Explorer was a recent video that was also technically a gold gainer. However, it's a very different gold gainer from those others. Treasure Map plays very differently. So like any other type of card that you want to pair up with something else in your hand, like Remodel or Courtier, like Treasure Maps, they are easiest to connect with each other if you are drawing all of your cards that you own into your hand. So engines that play a lot of cards, at least drawing most of them, but ideally all of them, right? That's basically the easy guaranteed way to get this to work. Now bear in mind that some other cards, like Remodel and Courtier, that want to be paired up with something else, they might actually have multiple valid targets, and so you can sort of get them a bit earlier and still have a reasonable chance of matching them with something else. But Treasure Map, you have exactly 1 other target that you're looking for, and that is your second map, right? Like very specifically, the whole point of Treasure Map is, can you pair up these 2 very specific cards together? And if you can do that, you will get 4 golds. So do we want to do this in a deck drawing engine, right? Because 4 golds, that's a lot of stop cards to throw into an engine. Well, sometimes your engine does just want a lot of golds in it. So sometimes the best thing that you can do in an engine is to generate a lot of money. And hey, guess what? Gold does that. Sometimes that's your only option, and so that's what you do. And of course, golds are a good remodel target, for example, to turn into provinces. So sometimes, if you've got to be buying the golds for remodel, it's spending a lot of money, and ultimately it turns into a province. It's pretty good, but it's even better than that, not spending huge amounts of money on getting those golds. So what are the sort of benefits that you're getting from Treasure Map compared to other gold gainers? Well, for a start, it's good if you're low on actions, right? You get 4 golds, and in total, you spent an action 1 time, and that is when you kicked off both your Treasure Maps to gain the golds. The maps go away once you've got your golds, so if you only wanted 4 of them, you now don't have this other card sitting in your deck unplayed. So if you had, for example, what's a good example? Like Explorer, and you only ever really wanted 4 golds, well, at that point you might want to stop playing Explorer, but the problem is the Explorer's still in your deck. You're still going to be drawing it every turn, but you don't actually want to play it. Well, Treasure Map goes away, so now it's just the golds. It's potentially quicker to get 4 golds. If you want 4 golds from something like Explorer, you've got to play it 4 times. But with Treasure Map, you only play it once. Now, you do have to actually buy or gain 2 of them. So if you could only do like 1 per turn, and then you have a turn to play the treasure map. That could be like 3 turns, but that's still faster, right? That's 3 turns to get like 4 golds or whatever. So, it's speedier than others. And the fact that it costs 4 is cheaper than others, and it makes it gainable via a lot of type of cards like Workshop. In fact, let's focus a little bit more on this last point. Let's go in depth a bit more. So most other gold gainers that you find tend to cost you 5 or more. So Bandit and Courtier and Explorer, we've seen, they all cost 5. But there's other ones like Soothsayer. Hoard in Prosperity is a treasure that costs 6 and gains you golds. Windfall and Commerce are events in future expansions that they both cost 5, and all they do is basically give you gold. So this is not an exhaustive list. There are loads more, and they don't all cost 5 or more, but the vast majority of them do. And what this means is that if you want to actually take advantage of the gold gainer, you do need to have enough money in your deck to have actually bought these in the first place. So at some point before you've got that gold gainer, you do have to make this big purchase to actually get the gainer in the first place. Now, the treasure map, this is not the case, because if you have something like an Ironworks or a Workshop or whatever, you can sometimes just pick up the treasure maps as you need them. And what this allows you to do is instead, for example, focus on trashing very quickly. And normally when you're doing that, you don't actually end up with enough money in your hand to actually buy something. Or what it lets you do is it gives you that opportunity cost of your buys to actually buy other things. So if all of the draw cards that you want cost 5, you would rather be spending your buys on those, and therefore you have your Workshop gains to get the treasure map rather than spending your buys on it. So there's a bunch of advantages that sometimes comes up with the fact that treasure map's a bit cheaper, right? It's easier to get in a whole range of ways. This should be no surprise to you if you've watched a lot of these videos. The fact that 5 is way more expensive than 4 is a big deal for a lot of cards. And treasure map, this can also be the case sometimes as well. Now, it's important to note that when you do gain the 4 golds, they all go on top of your deck. As we explained in the Bureaucrat video, this is probably one of the worst places to actually gain a treasure if you're going to get it sometimes, particularly if you've got an engine. So if we've drawn all of our cards and we then kick off our treasure maps and we gain 4 golds, and then we don't draw any more cards, we have a next turn where 4 of the cards are golds and we've got this one other card to play with, and that probably means that that's just all we're going to be doing on that turn, right? We get 4 golds, and that's a lot of money. Hey, great, we can buy a province with that. But a lot of the time in an engine, your turns are going to be a lot better if you're actually drawing your whole deck instead, right? Because you're going to have other things that you're going to want to be doing with your deck, like maybe there is a card in there that would give you a plus buy, and you could have got 2 cards instead of just 1 province or whatever. So what this means is that you, if possible, you really want to try and draw those golds up straight away on the same turn as you play the treasure maps. So you will need some draw ready in advance. You need to be overdrawing slightly when you play the treasure maps. Also, you want to do that because you're about to add 4 stop cards to your deck. You turn the 2 stop card treasure maps into 4 stop cards. So hopefully you've prepared for all that draw. But if you can draw at least some of them off of your deck once you've blown up your treasure maps, well, you get to play those golds right now, and you also make your next turn potentially a bit better. So that's something to think about when you are using treasure map in an engine. So just as using treasure map as engine payload, if you want golds in an engine, treasure map's pretty decent. I would say that this is probably the strongest use case for treasure map in general, is this engine payload. And that's largely because engines are very strong, but also because it removes a lot of the risk out of actually connecting the treasure maps together. So yeah, it's pretty fast at getting you. It's low on action cost, but it takes more gains. You should really focus on drawing your whole deck first before you get the treasure maps where possible. And of course, draw the golds where you can. Now, of course, one of the things here is that you sort of have no money and then all of a sudden, bang, you've got these 4 golds. Sometimes it's the case that you actually do want money a little bit sooner, and maybe you want to drip feed money into an engine so that you can actually start buying more things. It might be that you have an engine where you don't have workshop type cards, but you do have a decent source of extra buys. And in that case, how long do you want to hold off buying like one engine component per turn because you've hardly got any money until you've got the maps and like you're ready to use them? It might be that actually you want to get them a little bit sooner before all of your draw is up, or you want to pick some other gold gainer that like drip feeds you golds a bit more slowly. These are things to consider, but generally, if you want a gold gainer and an engine, treasure map, it's fine, right? It's pretty decent for that. Now, of course, I focused on this specifically because when I thought back about treasure map, this was the time when I used it most of the time. But it is, of course, not the only way in which you can use treasure map. So what about when we're not using a deck drawing engine, right? What if we just had a strategy where, for example, we bought as many treasure maps as we could quickly and just hoped to get lucky and smash them together, right? We get 4 golds, and if you want to do some sort of like basic big money strategy, getting 4 golds into your deck, it's actually pretty good for those kind of strategies if you could do this really quickly. But there's a problem with doing this. The odds are really bad. Odds are very heavily stacked against you, unless you buy like a lot of treasure maps. And if you don't match them together, then you've got all of these stop cards that you aren't allowed to play in your deck. And that's really, really awful, especially for this sort of like big money strategy, right? The cycling is slow because you're not drawing. You're just bloating yourself up like you just bought a bunch of curses, like absolutely dire, right? So this is not a very good strategy. I do just need to stress that if trying to do something like that. And particularly if you find yourself buying more than you need just to try and improve the odds, this is a sign that you've done something very wrong, right? You sort of only really want to be buying treasure map if you feel good about getting exactly 2 of them and connecting them together. You might get another pair later on or something, but depending on what on board, but generally you just only want to gain exactly 2 of them. Yeah, and here, like, if you did just buy a lot, if you buy a lot, you can connect a pair of maps sooner, but then you're still going to end up with some maps left in your deck. And sure, you might then be able to start playing them on their own to get rid of them one at a time, because they'll just get trashed with no benefit if you draw them solo. But, you did just spend early buys buying all of these treasure maps just to throw away some of them. Like, that's not very good, right? So don't fall into this trap of thinking that buying a bunch of treasure maps is going to be good, because it just isn't, okay? Card's not designed for that, so don't do it. Now, there is, of course, a high risk that it will work, so should we just gamble on it? Well, there are actually 2 situations where that might actually be a good idea. So I've got here, number 1, the outcome of the game is more likely to be stacked against you. So if you have a lot of players, the more players that you add, the worse the odds get for people further down the play order. So Dominion, unfortunately, does have a bit of like first player advantage, and the more players you have, the worse it gets for the lower numbered players. So if, just you think, oh man, I have no chance on this game, so I'm going to high roll this strategy that just tries to throw in a load of golds, is a possibility. Again, I'm not going to say that it's good, but you are more likely for this to be something that you would do the more players you have. This is very bad in 2-player, is what I want to stress. Like, do not do this in 2-player. The second thing is that sometimes games are a little bit more random than others, particularly if boards are weak and there is no consistent engine strategy. Then you do end up playing engines like Terminal Draw Big Money that are much more random in who wins. Generally, the weaker the board is, the more of a toss-up the game becomes. Now, that's not to say that it's always going to be some like 50-50 coin flip or whatever the odds are when you consider first player advantage, but generally some boards truly are just more random than others, and going for a high roll could actually give you better odds, maybe. This is also more likely with more players because it's harder to build a consistent engine because there's less engine components between players that are available. The piles remain the same size, but the number of people grabbing cards from those piles they're spread more thin, so you get less of them. But I need to really stress this: do not do this unless it is a weak board. Treasure map and gambling on a strong board, you're probably going to lose anyway, right? Because it's actually big money would lose anyway, so even a good big money still going to fail. So, I have to mention this, but I really got to stress this. This is not good. It's rare to find a board where this might actually be a winning move, but it can happen. Okay, so when can we make use of this? Let's say the board is weak. Let's say we're going to be going for a treasure-heavy strategy. We know we are big money-ish. When is treasure map actually going to be good? Is there anything that we can do to make it better? Generally, in order to make treasure map viable, you absolutely must have support. Right, you need something that makes it easier to connect the treasure maps together, despite the fact that you've got loads of cards and you are cycling very slowly through your deck. There are a bunch of things out there that might feel like good support that actually aren't as good as you might think they are. Like, it can be a little bit misleading sometimes. You think, oh, this card's going to be great, and then it doesn't really work out. And some forms actually do have other significant drawbacks that you've not thought of. So we're going to go through a bunch of these now and assess whether or not they are actually good. Because sometimes you are going to get a game where this stuff matters. So I do really need to go through it. So number one, is it good to just get 2 treasure maps before the first shuffle? So typically, you can't get 2 4-cost cards until after you've shuffled once. You can get one and then you get the other, and that just means that you are bloating your deck more and more until you've first got your 2 treasure maps. So are the odds good if we can open with 2 treasure maps? And sometimes we can do that. I've got some examples here. Baker, you can use the coffer to buy a treasure map on your turn where you normally get 3. Alms guarantees you 2 4s. Borrow can... especially if you open 4-3, you can get 2 with borrow on a 3-4. Might be a bit more difficult. You do have a chance of failing, but, well... Oh no, you always can, because you can just borrow again. Okay, so that's fine. And if you open with a 5-2, ball can help as well. Now, something that I need to mention here, have you ever played with a card called Urchin from Dark Ages? That is a card that is kind of infamous because it's very strong, but in a much better engine-y way. If you open with 2 of them, and it costs 3, and it is a cantrip, but even then the odds are pretty bad that you match them together on your first shuffle, after your first shuffle, like turn 3 or 4. It's way more likely because they draw 1 card than treasure map is, and the odds are still pretty bad. So if you've ever had this game where you got really frustrated because you couldn't match up the urchins and it felt really good, like to do it early, it seemed like a ball, but that would be really important. Well, bear in mind that doing this with treasure map is even worse. So if this doesn't scare you off of this as a strategy, then, hopefully you will consider the urchin and say, oh yeah, no, this sucks as a strategy. I don't want to do it. Board has to be very, very weak for this to be good, by the way, like exceptionally bad. But if you miss this when it is a thing that you do, you might lose. So keep it in mind. You can do this, but I don't really recommend this particular one. Okay, what about top decking a card? So something nice with top decking, if you don't need it now, push it to the next turn. And hey, that will improve your odds of matching maps together, it's true. But you've got to watch out for this because there's no guarantee that they're still going to pair up even on the next turn, right? If you have a card that top decks, hey, great, you might match it, but sometimes you're still going to get this failure and it's not going to work out. A card that's good for big money that top decks is, for example, Courtyard from Intrigue. It costs 2, you draw 3, and then you top deck a card. And you might think to yourself, hey, that's a card that I really want in my deck if I'm doing big money. And treasure map, maybe I can use the top decking ability to, help out the treasure map while also having these Courtyards in my deck. And that's true, but there's also worth noting of an unfortunate failure case, like with this card, where you have like 1 treasure map and a Courtyard in your hand, and then you play the Courtyard, and in the 3 cards that it draws your second map. Well, if that happens, you only can top deck 1 of them if you do, and you might not be able to play them now because you didn't play a village, and again, you have actually failed to connect them. So this isn't as good as it feels. There are cards that are better at this, like Haven, not strictly top decking, but it can help pass a card between turns. But one of the big problems with this is it's basically you still need to actually match the top decker with one of your treasure maps. So you are adding in a card to try and give you a chance of doing a little retry or something, extend the reach of the treasure maps. Like it's still bad for the same reason that just trying to blindly match up treasure maps is bad. But you got to consider it, right? Like it's still a thing that can happen sometimes when boards are bad. Now, what about cards that sift or filter, whatever you want to call it? These cards let you cycle through your deck very quickly, and as a result, the reach of the cards that you look at is improved. These are decent sometimes, still not guaranteed though, for the same reason that top decking fails. If you play like a warehouse, you look at the next 3 cards, well, you still might not match up your treasure maps. But what's worth noting with these is that these are still pretty good. Like Courtyard, once you've got a deck that's actually filled with golds, you're happy to have like cellars, warehouses, and something like silos in it. There are more examples, by the way. These were just some examples of this sort of card. So this can help. What's nice with stuff like warehouse and cellar particularly is that you can buy them on the turns where you can't buy treasure map. Silos, I gave this example to be different, but it does cost 4, and that gets in the way of like buying your second treasure map earlier. So again, these are just, I guess what these cards do like is they do like decks that have a very big disparity in the value of the cards that you have, right? So you want to have these really bad cards like Estate and Copper, and you do want really good cards like lots of golds, and that means that the value of sifting past those really bad cards goes up, right? So they are sort of built for decks like this, and so even if it doesn't work out straight away, they will be there to be useful when you do eventually match up the treasure maps. It's not all bad, though. There are some cards out there that are actually really, really good for treasure map, and I thought I would list them here. Now, it should be hopefully no surprise that all of these are landmarks, and there's a reason for this. So in the same way that I said that the problem with top deckers or sifters is that you have to actually still match them up with at least one of your treasure maps in the first place, these landscapes have the advantage of basically being useful all the time, no matter what you draw, and that gives them a unique advantage in that they let you do stuff like top deck a treasure map over and over and over again, no matter what else happens, and that's why these do actually work. So let's take a look at these. So save from adventures. It will cost you 1 coin every turn, but you basically get to take some card from your hand and then add it to your hand at the end of the turn. So it's not even top decking, it just adds it as an extra card next turn. So you can, as soon as you find 1 treasure map, you just hold on to it every turn until you find your second treasure map. So that makes it very, very consistent to match up 2 treasure maps pretty quickly. Still a bit of randomness in how long it takes to match them up, but it works, right? This will guarantee that you connect them within the shuffle after you've bought your second map, basically. Donate is pretty nuts with treasure maps. Sometimes with donate, the best thing you can do is try to get some high value money cards and then trash everything really quickly. Well, when you trash your entire deck, immediately down to like 5 cards or less, you're basically guaranteed to match up your 2 treasure maps. So what you can do when treasure map and donate are on the board is get 2 treasure maps as soon as possible, and then follow up with the donate as quickly as you can, and trash your deck down to 2 treasure maps, and potentially up to 3 more cards of your choice that you've got. And then you can smash the maps together immediately on the following turn, and then the turn after that you've got like 12 money at least, and you can pay off all the debt for donate, and then you've got this deck that's running around with at least 4 golds in it, just these incredible high value turns very consistently, right? So donate treasure map works very fast, and what is key here is that you can get the treasure maps quickly, and then you can you don't need to have enough money left after the donate to buy something. So if you compare it to something like Windfall or Commerce, those sorts of events that cost 5 and gain you golds, you actually have to donate down to a deck that can still buy them and use them. But with Treasure Map, you don't have to. You buy the Treasure Maps first and then you trash down. This is just a particularly fast sort of gold gainer compared to others, like as opposed to like buying a bandit or something and then donate. And that's really important in donate games because donate is a very, very fast card. It is ridiculously fast and it's stupidly powerful. Way of the Turtle is an interesting one. So what this lets you do is this lets you play a treasure map as Turtle, and it'll get set aside, and then at the start of every future turn you can basically either play the treasure map or set it aside again for Way of the Turtle, at least until you choose to eventually play the treasure map properly. And what this means is that you can hold on to a treasure map and wait until you have the other treasure map in your starting hand, and then you get to just play it for free and blow it up. But what's really important, so this is sort of like save, but you're not paying the 1 money cost every turn, but something that's very, very important with Way of the Turtle is that the other treasure map must actually be in your starting hand. If you are also using stuff like Warehouse, you can actually end up in a bit of trouble with this, because if you play like a Warehouse and then you draw your second treasure map, you don't have the chance to pair it up with the treasure map that's stuck set aside with Way of the Turtle. And you definitely can't like turtle 2 treasure maps. If you then turtle your other treasure map, you will never have both treasure maps back in the same hand, because you have to play them one at a time, and the other treasure map is going to be set aside from Way of the Turtle, so it won't work. But yeah, so this is just another example like save, basically. It's the same sort of thing, but you have to be careful because the treasure map does not actually ever go back to your hand, so it's just got a bit of a gotcha there. Now compare this to Way of the Frog, which actually puts it on top of your deck and you do actually get the treasure map in your hand. This is worse than save in a way that what is happening here is that you are slowing down your cycling because you are keep re-top decking the same treasure map, and so you only reach 4 more cards into your deck on your next turn, because the first card is always going to be the other treasure map. So you cycle through your deck a little bit slower, takes a little bit longer potentially to find the other treasure map, but in the same way, you do get to consistently re-top deck the treasure map over and over, and so you do eventually get there. So these are like the guaranteed super enablers for like bad non-engine strategies with treasure map. I say bad, they can actually be pretty good when you suddenly throw a load of golds in your deck. But do watch out for these with treasure map if there's no engine as well. So what are the key points, because we've gone through a wide variety of things in this video. So I think treasure map is better as an engine payload to throw a lot of golds into an engine for whatever reason it needs it, generating money, turning them into provinces with remodel, whatever. Outside of engines, try to avoid it unless you have real support or you are intentionally trying to do a gamble on odds that are really stacked against you. I can't stop you doing that, but it is worse than you think. I will just warn you on doing that. Treasure map could be a bit of a trap for new players. So it's got this big flashy outcome, and the naive gambling strategy will actually work sometimes. So if you are playing like a 4-player game against fairly new players, and people are like, oh, 4 golds, I'm going to buy treasure map, one of those players might actually connect them really early on and then just have this great deck with golds, and bang, all these golds, and they think, wow, look how good this card is. It actually might not be very good, right? Like, it's actually bad, but they can think, whoa, like, wow, how amazing was this? And then get stuck in thinking that treasure map is really good with this sort of gambling low odds strategy. It's not, right? Don't fall for it. It's actually really bad. Anyway, that was everything I have to say about treasure map. So what we're going to do now is we are going to head over to the online client and we are going to generate some kingdoms with treasure map, and we're going to assess how good it is. Here we have, well, I spot straight away that there is no village at all. There is upgrade to get thin. There is courtyard, there is treasure map. So there's no engine here. There's also island to get thin. There's gardens, but that doesn't feel very good. Like Smuggler's Gardens doesn't really work compared to like Workshop Gardens. Pirate Ship also doesn't feel very good. What do I want to do? I don't want to say this is Courtyard Treasure Map. Like, it doesn't feel very good. I don't know if I actually want an upgrade. Maybe I do. I think I get an upgrade because I can turn estates into silver and then I can get, like, courtyards. And it's probably that. And maybe I actually do end up with treasure maps. If I can thin some coppers and get some courtyards, then actually odds aren't that bad to actually match up treasure maps. I would be a little bit worried about Pirate Ship just because this board is so weak. But is that actually good? Like, especially if I'm thinning my coppers, I could actually be at risk of losing my my golds, right? Because you can slowly sort of try and get thin with upgrade and then get pirate ships and just smash your opponent's deck and sort of make them run out. Does that actually work here? Or is it just still too bad? Like, I don't think the ability to get rid of your coppers is fast enough. Like, upgrade actually doesn't work that quickly. So what do we even do here? Torturer Big Money doesn't feel so good. Maybe it's just Courtyard Big Money. Maybe that's going to be better than the treasure map thing. Like, I know Outpost and Vassal are useless here. Maybe it is... Maybe it really is just Courtyard Treasure Map. Like, maybe you actually do go for it, and maybe you don't bother with the upgrade. You always have stuff like Island, potentially, that you can pick up that's decent. Like, maybe that's better than Courtyard Treasure Map. You like Courtyard and you just grab a few islands early on and set aside the estates while getting a bit of points. The gardens are available for you if the game goes long, but it probably won't with Courtyard. Like, there's no support. Gaining one card per turn is really bad. You do potentially get more cards out of your treasure maps than one per turn, but only once, right? It's Yeah, this board is so weak that I actually think you could probably Courtyard Treasure Map and it's okay. And I think you don't have to worry that much about Pirate Ship. If they help you get rid of your coppers, then that's actually quite nice for you, I think. If they open with like Pirate Ship, I might grab an island to get rid of some estates, let them smash some coppers away from me, and then like that makes it easier to connect treasure maps, and I can just keep smacking together treasure maps if they keep trying to trash with Pirate Ship, and I'll probably win overall because you can't really do like Courtyard Pirate Ship as easily potentially. Yeah, so this might actually be Courtyard Treasure Map. What a weak board that is. Like, really funny. Just how bad this board is as a board. Yeah, so I can see Treasure Map potentially being used. Maybe I'm missing something that's stronger there. I don't really see it. Maybe Pirate Ship is actually good there. You know, I'm just not so sure. Here we have no trashing at all, is the first thing I spot. We have, as a village, Throne Room and Nobles, but we do have Wharf and Witch and Nobles and Smithy all as draw. So there's a lot of draw here. We've got Workshop to gain us Throne Rooms and Smithies. Are there any non-terminals aside from Nobles? Potentially Courtier, but you're playing that as a non-terminal. So the Throne Room engine is unfortunate. I would think it was good. Well, actually, no, it is good because there's Wharf, right? It's actually quite easy to pick off the Throne Room engine and play multiple Throne Rooms if you've got a bunch of Wharfs. But there's also a Junker with Witch, and I don't know if Wharf can actually do that well in the Onslaught. So I think this has to start off as Witch Big Money, and then we get some Wharves, and maybe that's all we can really do here. Even in the presence of Workshop, I don't know if we can actually gain like enough fast enough. It's going to be tricky at first to actually play the Workshop because we want to be playing these cards instead, and there's no like real village except Nobles, which is really expensive and quite bad as a village. Like We definitely need to get the cursing, and then I think it's too difficult to do anything else. I'm going to open Cut Purse, and I'm going to open Silver, and I'm going to try and Witch a bunch, and then I'm going to shift over to Wharves, and I think it is just going to be big money with those, and there's no treasure map here. Like, deck is far too bloated for treasure map to be useful on this board. Whether we go for Workshop with Throne Room, or whether we avoid it, we are not picking up treasure map in either case, I do not believe. Because once all the curses are in, even with Wharf, it's actually going to be quite tricky to draw enough to make gaining all of those golds worthwhile. And I think we just sort of go for a 1 province per turn, and we don't try to build beyond that. Courtier might be better than treasure map, honestly, if we do want golds anyway. Okay, what's happening here? We have a really good village. We got 3 villages, actually. Native village, fishing village, and regular village. Our draw is Torturer, so straight away we've got a potential Torturer engine. Our only trashing is Remodel, but to get rid of our estates, they can be turned into various types of village, which is really nice. We've got Militia as well. I'm going to open Fishing Village and Militia. I really want to start gaining Torturers, and just like Torturers and Fishing Villages, as much as I can, even if I'm not trashing. So I think I go Militia instead of Remodel to stop my opponent from getting the Torturer early on. I think that's important. After that, how good is Militia? Well, it's actually... Well, there is Torturer to discard, but I think Militia can work pretty well with Torturer, especially because with Fishing Village we have the freedom to play it first and then start drawing. You know, we can wait until our opponent, or they pick up a curse, and then we can force them to discard it, and then we play more Torturers. So Fishing Village enables that out of order Militia play that's really good here. And then we do eventually get a remodel, and we can start turning coppers into, I guess, even like native villages, or heck, you can even turn them into embargoes and then play the embargo and really slowly thin coppers that way. The embargo might not be that useful because you've got another cursor, so you might just like embargo curse pile or something, just get them out of the way. If we do this slowly and we do start remodeling stuff, note that we can use native village as a kind of pseudo trasher potentially, but I don't think we will be able to keep stuff out of our deck for very long, and I don't actually want too many native villages, so I think I would rather buy remodel into embargo and blow them up. When we do all that, if we do get a solid engine going, we've got market, there is actually room for treasure map, especially because we've got remodel. We can remodel golds into province. So I think there's a really good payoff for the engine. We definitely want to try and build the torture engine. We've got remodel to help with gold to make it worthwhile. And so I think treasure map will eventually be something that we want to put in our deck. It's actually going to take a long time to get there. We might have remodeled all of our estates before we actually get any treasure maps. But in the event that we don't, treasure map is there for us. Is regular village better than fishing village? We might actually not get too many fishing villages and have some, just because the extra card draw might be okay. But I really like fishing village here, actually. So treasure map, I think I would buy as engine payload here if my opponent hasn't resigned from getting crushed by torturer or whatever. But we really want to focus on trying so hard to get that torturous thing off. The lack of trashing is going to stink for a while, but we will eventually get there. So yeah, that was +1 for treasure map, that kingdom. Here we have straight away ambassador thinning. Now that's a strong attack, and there is a lighthouse. In fact, it's 4 attacks with lighthouse. So we're going to open ambassador and lighthouse, I think. We want to stop getting ambassador. We don't want to be junked by ambassador. So we're going to get 2 lighthouses, and we're going to thin down. And we're going to aim to play a lighthouse every turn if we can, except there is no village, but there is minion as draw instead. Okay, that's good. So golds are not very good in a minion deck. We do want to get as many minions as we can. And for that reason, while we will have some lighthouses, we do need to eventually pick up a silver or 2, I think, and we've got to get minion, and then we're going to try and just do a minion deck. We do get to play 1 terminal, and that's probably just going to remain ambassador throughout the game, I think. We will keep some junk, and we will... Well, at some point we might not be able to play it, but I don't think treasure map is any good here. It's really hard in a minion deck to actually connect treasure maps, and there's sort of nothing else to do except get thin and try and draw with minion, basically. So that's what we have to do, and you just don't want golds in that kind of deck at all. You're never going to connect the treasure maps, so it's going to be very difficult in the first place, and then when you do, you don't even want the golds. Having said that, there is replace treasure map, but it's too hard to connect them otherwise, I think. I guess the alternative is that you get really thin with ambassador, you treasure map, and then you get a replace, and you do start just provincing with treasure maps, but that deck's only going to go so far, and you don't have any draw, and you want to be playing like a lighthouse every turn. Like, you have to go for the minion, and then you know, how do you connect the replace with the golds? Because playing the replace also ends your turn, right? So... but you do get 4 golds, which is a decent amount. But I think I would rather just buy a province per turn by playing a load of minions. I think that's probably the safer long-term play. You could get more lighthouses, which are probably safe with minion when you run out of minions. But there's no plus buy. I think treasure map is a miss on this, unless you really want to go for the replace thing. But bear in mind, you're not even going to curse your opponent because they want to play lighthouse every turn, and you sort of need minion to do that. So, yeah, I think that's a bust for the golds, even with a remodel variant. It's just minion doesn't let you do it. So, Last Kingdom. I spot Chapel and Masquerade immediately. Very strong trashers. So we can get thin very quickly. We've got a village with village. We've got draw with council room and laboratory and diplomat. There's even a workshop. So what we can do here is we can... Ooh, this might be the interesting... because there's even a 4-cost draw card. Not as good as these, but we have got village to make it work. This might be the workshop engine with Chapel, where you actually open Chapel and Village, and then you pick up a workshop as soon as you can, and the aim is you keep getting villages and workshops and like diplomats, or like smithy if it's available, and you basically just create where you're gaining a load in all at once, and then you like 3-pile pretty fast. Cut Purse doesn't feel very good here, because I think it's easy enough to draw. And if they have a diplomat, which they're going to have a bunch, you can actually help it. Having a masquerade might be okay, but I think we can get treasure map through workshop. So if we are thinning very quickly and we are workshopping a draw engine, we can eventually shift that to drawing treasure maps and then just get a load of gold. And then the only plus buy is council room, but we can probably buy one at that point. And I think it's okay to have a council room here. Like, to play a single council room is probably fine, but we're going to be gaining a load of stuff with workshop, and that can include treasure maps. I think whether or not we shift into treasure maps as our payload for building the engine is largely going to depend on how quickly and what piles are at risk of 3-piling, potentially. These 2 piles definitely will, but how else does the game go? But treasure map looks really good at throwing in to your deck once you've got a good engine going. I do like that here. Masquerade seems... Yeah, it's difficult. You kind of want to steal good cards from your opponent, and Chapel helps you steal cards really easily because both players really want to get thin. So I think Masquerade's a bit of a worry, but that's fine because you'll just give away spare engine components, won't you? And you just gain a load more with workshops. So maybe Masquerade's not so worrying. Maybe you get one. That's fine. Yeah, so treasure map seems decent here as your engine payload because you've got a really strong engine. There's Chapel and there's good... components, and there's even a gainer as well of those engine components. So exploding engine and treasure map is the best payload that we have for it. So we're definitely going to use it in that case. So there you go. As you can see, treasure map, sometimes just the engine wasn't, or the board wasn't going to work for it, like there was no engine. But when there is, if there's nothing better to do, treasure map really does get golds in fast. So we saw a whole range of boards there. Hopefully that was instructive on the sort of situations when you might want treasure map. Anyway, I hope this video was useful for you. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.